1 o'clock, so I think we'll get the webinar started. My name's Dave Bromelkamp, and I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. This afternoon, I'm gonna share some insights into the new book that I just published. Disclaimer on this would be that today's presentation is just it's limited to general educational purposes, and this is not intended to be investment advice. Our goal today is to talk in general about books, and this book in particular. And some people have questions about book publishing, which is also an interesting topic. So the agenda today is, in about a 30-minute time frame, I'm going to try to cover why did I start AdvisorSmart as a new company, and then why did I end up writing the first book for AdvisorSmart for the individual investor. Then we'll talk a little bit about my journey as an author, and then I'll conclude with some updates on the book project and future projects that are related to the book. And then we'll open it up to questions and answers. And I would say that if anybody has questions during my presentation, if you want to just type them into the chat section, that's a very efficient way for us to capture your questions. And I'll make sure that I leave time at the end to answer any of your questions. So next section. Next slide. So AdvisorSmart came to me as an idea about 7 or 8 years ago. And I wanted to help investors learn how to select financial advisors to get better financial advice. And being a financial advisor for 35 years, I learned that a lot of times when people came in and they wanted to hire a financial advisor or financial planner, they didn't always understand like what financial planners do for a living. And so they didn't always ask, they didn't know what questions to ask. And sometimes I could see them asking questions that were sort of on the right track, but completely missing questions that they should be asking about other issues. So I decided when about 7 or 8 years ago that I'm 64 now, so I was about 56 years old at the time. And I said, why don't I use my decades of experience as a financial advisor to write down all the questions that people should be asking when they're selecting financial advisors, and then help them with a process, a logical, rational process that they could use to select a financial advisor that would be a good fit for them as an individual. So when I first started outlining the book and coming up with this plan, my attorney advised me to set up an LLC to own the book, because he said, you're going to have intellectual property, you're going to have trademarks, and you're going to have copyrights, etc. So the first thing I had to do is set up an LLC called AdvisorSmart. So that's my new little company that I thought originally was just going to hold this one book. And I went off to start writing the book, and spent about maybe 2 years researching and organizing the book, writing the outline, and started to write blog posts. But being a perfectionist, it was really easy for me to start a blog post, but almost impossible to finish a blog post. And so about 2 years into the project, I realized that I needed somebody outside of me to help me to write the blog posts. And I got matched up with a really good writer by the name of Kate Leibfried from Click Clack Writing. And the process we developed was to blog the book out 1 month at a time. And the way Kate and I worked together is I would give her an outline, I would tell her what we wanted to write about, and then she would say, okay, if the question was, what's a certified financial planner? I'd explain it to her. I would tell her all the issues that we needed to consider. And then what she would do is draft up a blog post. And then I would look at it, and 90% of the time she got it the first time. 10% of the time it was more like, Kate, you must not have been listening. This is what the subject was. So in terms of a collaboration, we had a really good idea to get started and do these blog posts. And it got blogged out over about a 3-year period as the AdvisorSmart blog for the individual investor. So that's how I got the company started. My goal was to help individual investors. And the first idea was to write that book. So this is the finished product. We just got it released on Amazon on Tuesday. And the Kindle ebook was released about 12 days ago on April 4th. And so you can buy the book either via the Kindle version or the hardcover version. But it's a momentous occasion when you finally get to the point where you do all the work of planning the book and it actually ends up getting published, and you can hand it to someone and say, hey, read this. Or some people have read the book and come back to me and, great feedback on both positive and negative on the book. It's like, if it's helpful for people, that means it's successful. That's my opinion. If somebody can take the material and it helps them to get better financial advice, that's what we're trying to accomplish. So on the next slide, I asked someone to draw a picture of the content of the book. And he came up with this 5-step process. And this is kind of a messy image, but he actually does capture the whole process that I explained in the book in this one image. If anybody ever wants this image, I'll be happy to provide it for you. But what I want to do in the next 5 slides is, because the AdvisorSmart method is a 5-step process, I took this document and I chopped it into 5 pieces. And in order for me to explain the book to you in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to just take the next 5 slides to go through these 5 steps in the process. So the first step in the process is people have to learn how to avoid the biased sources of financial advice. And people get information from the television, newspaper, friends and family members, financial advisors, financial newsletters, the internet, coworkers, and almost everyone that gives you advice has some kind of conflict of interest. And an example would be if you watch, let's say, CNBC or NBC or CBS or something, and you see that there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies advertising prescription drugs. Obviously, these pharmaceutical companies are paying the television station a lot of money for their commercials. And the people that actually do a news program are not going to tell you anything bad about their advertisers. So the news can be biased by the advertisers. It happens that way with newspapers, magazines, television, radio. So what you have to do is just be aware that the sources of advice that you're looking at, some of them you have to say, wait a minute, is that advice actually objective, concrete, rational, logical advice? Or is it something that is being biased by marketing of the companies that are advertising? So that's the first step, is look for conflicts of interest and try to learn how to avoid the sources of biased financial advice. I like to talk about using the process of elimination. To me, let's say when I look at financial advisors, there's 400,000 financial advisors in the United States. If you just started to eliminate the advisors that are biased, you could eliminate your search for a financial advisor by eliminating the firms and advisors that have conflicts of interest with you as an investor. So that as we go to the second step in the process, to be more positive and optimistic, what are the qualities of financial advice that you would actually look for if you were looking for a high quality source of advice? And to me, there's 5 qualities of very good financial advice. It's advice that's independent of the product providers. It's objective advice. It's comprehensive in nature, and it looks at your whole situation instead of 10 or 20% of your situation. It's professional advice in that you're working with someone that probably has training, like a certified financial planner would have professional training. And then it's disciplined in that the investment decision-making processes are very logical and rational and disciplined. So the next step 3 in the process is you want to be searching for professionally trained fee-only fiduciary financial planners. And as I kind of drew in this picture, if you have all the advisors at the top of the process, that's the 400,000 financial advisors. And if you look at just people that are financial planners, that's only 25% of all the advisors. There's 100,000 certified financial planners out of 400,000 advisors. So as I said, process of elimination, forget about the 75% that are not certified financial planners and just focus on the ones that are professionally trained certified financial planners. The next step you would look at is to say, well, of the 100,000 certified financial planners, which ones are actually, you can go back to the prior slide. When you're looking at the certified financial planners, 100,000 of them, I think about 2/3 of them have a license to sell a financial product, which makes them not as objective as you'd like them to be. So you want to search for the fee-only financial advisors, which represents a small subset of the certified financial planners. And finally, you want your advisor to be a legal fiduciary all the time on all their advice for all their clients. And the interesting thing here is there's a lot of people that say they're a fiduciary, and they might be a fiduciary for some of their clients, some of the time on some of their advice. But that's like going to your doctor and saying, hey, doctor, give me some advice. And he says, well, I adhere to the Hippocratic Oath some of the time for some of my patients. It's like that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You want a physician or a professional like a doctor, a dentist, accountant, or attorney. You want them to be giving you their best advice on all your assets at all the time. And you want them to be doing it for all their clients. You don't want them to be just doing it for some of their clients. So that's the idea of a legal fiduciary. And I add in this idea of legal fiduciary all the time for all their clients, with all their advice. Next slide. So the next slide here is, once you kind of hone in on what you're looking for, you can search for financial advisors online that have the criteria that you are looking for very efficiently. Much like you can go online and buy just about anything you want on Amazon. You need a new chair, you can buy it. You need a new car, you can buy it. You can buy anything on the internet. And a lot of us do research on the internet if we know what we're looking for. The 3 best online search tools that I recommend in the book are the napfa.org website is an organization that verifies that financial advisors are fee-only financial advisors. They have a find an advisor tool. You type in your zip code, you're going to get all the fee-only financial advisors in your neighborhood. It's a great tool. The second tool is the Fee-Only Network, which is very closely associated with the napfa.org organization. But what it does is it gives you more information on the financial advisors, so you can do a little bit more online research to find what you're looking for before you ever have to contact the financial advisor. And if the first 2 online search tools don't work for you and you need some hand-holding, the third tool is called WealthRamp. And this is run by a woman by the name of Pam Kruger. And she will talk to you and help you understand more about what you're looking for and can match you with a good fee-only financial planning firm. And I think she has hundreds of firms in her universe that she's vetted. And, if you need somebody to talk to as opposed to just doing it online, Pam is a great resource for someone that's looking for a fee-only financial advisor. So in the next step 5 is, once you've maybe identified 3, 4, 5 different financial advisory firms that you want to talk to. You're going to schedule interviews, but before you start the interviews, you want to create a list of your needs, wants, and nice to haves. And what this is creating the things that you want to see in the end result when you hire a financial advisor. And so a need could be something like, you could say, Dave, I understand your idea that I should work with a certified financial planner. So I'm going to put that as a need. And a want might be something like, some people might prefer a male or a female financial advisor. There's no right answer. That's just a preference. But if you want to work with a male rather than a female or vice versa, you just make sure that you note that as one of your wants. And then a nice to have might be, I want to have an advisor that works within 5 miles of my home, or I want a financial advisor that has an MBA or whatever. You could put nice to haves on your list, and that actually might help you when you're interviewing financial advisors to kind of get to the right answer. Your interview checklist is something where you're going to go into the interview and you're going to have your questions to clarify if that financial advisor has the things that you're looking for in a financial advisor. And then ultimately, you're going to conduct those interviews. Some of the interviews, or I would say almost all the interviews, you're going to have some, I would say, non-quantitative thoughts where you might go into a meeting and you see the advisor for the first time and you say, ooh, this person looks scary. They're too tall. They're too short. They're, they don't know how to dress. They're too dressy. You're going to get an image of a person just by interacting with them. Do they have good etiquette? Are they polite? Do you feel comfortable with them? So those are the kind of qualitative factors that the only way you're going to gauge that is by having an in-person interview and learning more about that person, maybe learning more about their background and things like that. But ultimately, the goal is you want to hire a financial advisor where you have such trust in the relationship that you're going to be able to share more of your life and your family and your issues so that that advisor can give you better advice. In the same way that if you have a good relationship with a doctor, a dentist, or an accountant or an attorney, a lot of times trust builds over time. I just went to the dentist this morning. I've had the same dentist since the mid 1980s. So about 40-year relationship with a dentist. Every time I go into the dentist, I just say, whatever, doc, do whatever you want because I trust you. And it's great to have that kind of a trust relationship with a professional. And everybody deserves to have that type of a relationship with their financial advisor. And I'm pretty confident if you go through the process that I recommend in the book, that you're going to get to the relationship that you want and that you deserve as an investor. So that's kind of an overview of the book. And now I just want to shift gears a little bit into my journey as an author. And what I learned is writing or publishing or marketing a book is there's 3 different phases to the book project. A lot of people come up with the idea that they're going to write a book. Not very many people actually get the book published. I think the statistic is something like 10% of the people that come up with the idea to write a book actually get it published, because there's a lot of work involved in the front end of the process. Where I had some strengths is I was able to organize the material. I got the company established as an LLC. I got trademarks on the name. I got copyrights on the images. All the intellectual property was taken care of. Then I started doing the outline. Then I realized I needed an outside writer to help me with writing. I learned the difference between being an author and being a writer. There's a lot of writers that know how to write, but they don't have the subject that needs to be written about. And so for me, I'm the author, not the writer. I had to collaborate with a writer to actually get the book written and published. So that was like this first part we did by doing the monthly blogs. And then we created the manuscript out of about 36 blog posts. And I was so happy with myself. And this was about 2 years ago. I said, I'm so happy I finished my book. And I walked around for about a week thinking I was just King Kong because I'd written a book. And then I realized, I said to my ghostwriter, Kate, I said, Kate, how are we going to get this book published? And she goes, okay, Dave, now we're going into the second phase of what a book is all about. We're going to talk about publishing the book. And as someone who had never published a book before, when I talked to the publisher, the first thing I realized is that they have jargon, just like the financial advisors have their own jargon. And I didn't really understand what they were talking about. And I ended up, every time they would use a new term, I'd have to look it up, and I had to do research on what it was that they were talking about. And that was very frustrating for me. Because as a newbie, having never published a book before, I had to trust people that actually had done this before. And if the publisher had, published, I don't know, 60 books a year, I figured if they could do one more book, that would be good for me. So I kind of had to be coached along the way. But I thought that publishing the book might take like 30 days. It ended up taking about 24 months, I think. And that was a big surprise to me. It was a big shock, actually. And I was kind of happy and unhappy as I went through the process, because every time I ran into a roadblock, I kind of got disappointed. I was disappointed a lot, maybe because I had unrealistic expectations going into the publishing process. But I did learn a lot. So I think I'm a lot smarter about publishing a book now than I was 2 years ago. The fact that we actually got the book, published and printed and on sale on Amazon, it's a miracle. It actually happened. And so now I can say the publishing aspect is actually done with. So I've finished the writing process, the publishing process. Now I'm going into the marketing process, which is people need to be made aware of the book. And so like today's webinar is an opportunity to make people aware of the book. Other things that I'll be doing is things like, speaking at book clubs or Rotary clubs or small church groups or public presentations at trade associations or professional conferences and things like that. I'm set up for the next couple of years to try to explain the concepts in the book to audiences. And I have really 3 audiences for the book. The first one is pretty obvious. It's the average investor that wants financial advice, but really doesn't know how to go about hiring, finding and selecting a financial advisor. That's the primary audience. The secondary audience is financial advisors who work at firms that are not necessarily providing really objective financial advice. And I've learned this over the last couple of years as I've talked with people, is that a lot of financial advisors say, Dave, everybody would like to work in a firm where it's professional and it's providing comprehensive advice and it's disciplined advice. But some people, they have a job at a current firm that isn't really set up that way. So part of my audience is the financial advisor that might want to work in a firm that's a little bit more, I would call it client-centric, more of an investor advocate, trying to give objective financial advice to the consumer. I think there's a lot of financial advisors that will read the book and start to learn about what they could do to make themselves a better financial advisor for the consumer. And then the third audience is college students who might want to pursue financial planning as a career. And I'm working with a couple different groups of financial planning students at different colleges. And it's really interesting to learn. I mean, these kids are really smart, but they don't know what they don't know yet. And so what I'm going to try to do over the next 5 years is try to help educate college students about the opportunities in financial planning, and in particular, fee-only financial planning, where you get to be more of an objective financial professional and you're less of a product provider. And most of the kids are kind of learning that, you know, if you get hired by an life insurance company coming out of college, they'll call you a financial planner, but you're really supposed to be selling life insurance. Otherwise, you're not going to make any money. So they're that smart. They understand that, but they don't know how to find jobs in independent fee-only financial planning firms. So I'm going to try to help coach college students, and I can use the book and the concepts in the book to do that. So finally, I'll just give you an update on the current AdvisorSmart updates and some future projects. As I said earlier, the ebook came out on Kindle about 12, 13, 14 days ago, 2 weeks ago. Hardcover book came out a couple days ago. Softcover book is probably going to be online late this year, early next year. I'm in the process of developing an online course, which basically it's me explaining the book in about a 4-hour video course. And the script for that is done, and I've got an outside consultant helping me with it. And I'm going to be going to video it in the middle of July. And supposedly that's going to be online late August, maybe early September. The other thing I've got online for this year is to record the audiobook version of the book. And then, as I said earlier, public speaking is something that I think is going to be an important thing for me to be able to make myself available to do that. Whether it's big groups or small groups, I don't really care. I think that I think I could help a lot of people by explaining the concepts in the book. And, you know, our goal is to help a lot of investors to get smarter about selecting financial advisors so that they can get better financial advice. So then last thing I want to hone in on is the future project is over the last couple of days, a lot of people have said, Dave, congratulations. That's a lot of work. Glad you got that done. And I almost want to come back to them and say, oh boy, writing a book and publishing it is like running a 26.2-mile marathon. When you get done with a marathon, I think you're supposed to take a couple of days off and take a break, take a nap, lay down, sit down, whatever. But what I started in the process here just in the course of the last year is there are 3 chapters in the AdvisorSmart book on the idea of the fiduciary standard for the financial advisor. And when Kate and I were writing the first book, she said, Dave, this fiduciary subject's really important, and we should write a lot more about this. And I said to her at the time, I said, we can't write the AdvisorSmart book about the fiduciary standard because it's a book in and of itself. There's so much we have to cover to write and explain the fiduciary standard for the financial advisor. And I kind of told her this must have been about, maybe it could have been like 3 years ago. I said, table the idea of the Mr. Fiduciary. And I said, we'll rev that up once the AdvisorSmart book gets published. So now the AdvisorSmart book is published, and we've at the same time created the Mr. Fiduciary blog. The Mr. Fiduciary blog, the audience there is primarily going to be financial advisors, like all 400,000 financial advisors in the United States, but then also the regulators who regulate the financial advisors. Because the regulators and the politicians, they can't pass laws that make sense if they don't understand the issue. And so the primary goal of Mr. Fiduciary is to encourage to encourage financial advisors to work as legal fiduciaries for all their clients on all their advice all the time. The secondary goal is to help politicians and regulators and investor advocate organizations and consumer advocacy organizations to understand what we were talking about when we talk about the fiduciary standard for the financial advisor. It's kind of a very narrow topic, but it's really important. And I think we can make a lot of progress for the consumer by getting very exact in our language about what we mean by the fiduciary standard for the financial advisor. So that's my prepared comments. I'm pretty much on time at 32 minutes. And I just wanted to summarize by saying, we talked about why I started AdvisorSmart as a new company. And we talked about the AdvisorSmart book, my author's journey, updates on the book and future projects. And now I'll open it to any questions that people have about any of those subjects. Hearing nothing, either my computer is broken or there are no questions. And if there are no questions, I will just say thank you for participating in the webinar and hope everybody gets a chance to read the book and gives me feedback on the book. I appreciate feedback from everyone. So thanks for your time today. Bye from AdvisorSmart.